kind of photograph that exists in every murder case. Not the crime scene photos. Not the mugshots. I'm talking about the last happy moment. The last time someone smiled at a camera before their world ended. For Romeca Meeks Blackman, that photograph was taken on September 7th, 2025. She's holding her 6-year-old son. They're both laughing. She has no idea that in less than 24 hours, she'll write him a note that will become the last words he ever receives from her. And here's what makes this case different from every other story you've heard about jealousy and violence. The autopsy report that just came out doesn't just tell us how she died. It tells us something the killer never expected anyone to discover. Something that changes the entire narrative of self-defense. Something that proves beyond any scientific doubt that what happened on that September morning wasn't protection. It was execution. The report is public now. Case Me 2025-04824. Cook County Medical Examiner. And buried in the clinical language about wound trajectories and bullet fragments is a detail so specific, so damning, that when Holly Johnson's defense attorneys read it, they must have felt their entire strategy collapse. Because you can argue about what witnesses saw. You can dispute who said what. You can claim fear and self-defense all you want. But you cannot argue with the angle of a bullet. You cannot negotiate with the absence of gunpowder residue. And you cannot explain away what the science proves, that Romeca Meeks Blackman was looking directly at Holly Johnson when she was shot in the face. From a distance, while completely sober, in broad daylight, outside an elementary school. We've all experienced jealousy, that corrosive feeling when someone else has what you think should be yours. For most people, it burns hot and then fades. You block the Instagram account. You avoid certain places. You move on with your life. But what happens when jealousy doesn't fade? What happens when it calcifies into something harder, something that starts making plans instead of just feeling feelings? This case lives in that space between normal human emotion and unforgivable human action. And the distance between those two things? According to the autopsy report, it was exactly 6 inches. The minimum distance required for a bullet to leave no soot deposition on skin. 6 inches between feeling threatened and committing murder. 6 inches that Holly Johnson is going to have to explain to a jury. If you want to understand how the human mind justifies the unjustifiable, you're in the right place. This story will stay with you long after you hear the verdict. Subscribe because what the science revealed about this killing exposes something profound about how we lie to ourselves about our own capacity for violence. Let's start with what everyone thinks they know about this case. 2 women, 1 man, a love triangle that turned deadly. Holly Johnson claims self-defense. The prosecution claims premeditated murder.
Simple story, right?
But here's what nobody understood until the autopsy came back. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a moment of panic. The physical evidence proves that Holly Johnson had time. She had distance. She had choices. And the choice she made, according to the trajectory analysis and wound pattern documentation, was to aim carefully and fire twice. Once at Romeca's face. Once at her thigh. Both shots front to back. Both shots from beyond contact range. Both shots fatal on their own. Think about what that means for a second. In the chaos of a street fight, in the heat of an argument, in a moment of genuine fear for your life, most people who fire a gun don't have that kind of precision. They don't carefully select 2 different target areas on a moving person's body. They don't maintain enough distance to avoid leaving powder residue. They fire wildly, desperately, trying to stop a threat. But the autopsy report describes something else entirely. It describes someone who was far enough away to avoid the telltale signs of close-range shooting. Someone who was composed enough to hit 2 different parts of the body with fatal accuracy. Someone who wasn't in a struggle over a weapon, because if they were, there would be evidence of that struggle on Romeca's body. There isn't. Romeca Meeks Blackman was 31 years old when she died. The same age as Holly Johnson. They had never met in person before September 8, 2025.
Think about that.
2 women who had never actually been face-to-face were connected by one thing. Carlos Smith, a man who had children with both of them. A man who, according to court testimony, had a documented history of putting his hands on Romeca. A man who, according to prosecutors, held Romeca in a chokehold while his new partner retrieved a gun. But this isn't really a story about Carlos Smith, even though he's the reason these women's paths crossed. This is a story about what happens when someone convinces themselves that eliminating another person is a form of self-preservation. Before we go further into what the autopsy revealed, you need to understand who Romeca was. Not the victim. Not the woman reduced to case number Me 2025-04824. The human being who existed before Holly Johnson decided she needed to die. Romeca was studying to become a nurse. She worked full-time while taking classes. She was raising her son as a single mother. Her family called her Big Meeks, not because of her size, but because of her presence. She was the baby of the family, and somehow also the one everyone leaned on. Her social media shows a woman who posted motivational quotes and pictures of her son's achievements. She documented his first day of first grade with pride. She wrote about making sure his world stayed perfect even when hers was falling apart. On September 7th, the day before she was killed, Romeca posted a photo with her son. They're both smiling. She's wearing a pink shirt. He's got his arms around her neck. The caption talks about being blessed, about being grateful, about loving harder than she's ever been hurt. There's no indication in that post that she's afraid. No suggestion that she believes her life is in danger. No hint that within 24 hours she'll be shot twice in broad daylight while other mothers are dropping their children off at school. What Romeca did know was that Carlos Smith kept showing up in her life, even though she had a protective order against him. She knew he had a new partner. She knew that partner was Holly Johnson. What she didn't know was that Holly had filed for a stalking no-contact order against her in 2024. An order that was granted in July. An order that was never actually served. An order that Romeca had no idea existed. Here's where the complexity starts to build. Holly Johnson wasn't some street criminal. She had no prior record. She had a valid FOID card and a concealed carry license. She was legally authorized to possess a firearm. She was a mother herself, with a 6-month-old baby. In the months before the shooting, she had documented what she described as harassment from Romeca. She went to court. She got an order of protection. She did everything the system tells you to do when you feel threatened. So when her attorneys stand up in court and argue self-defense, they're not arguing on behalf of someone with a history of violence. They're arguing for someone who, on paper, looks like a law-abiding citizen who feared for her life. And that's what makes this case so psychologically fascinating. Because if Holly Johnson genuinely believed Romeca was a threat, if she genuinely feared for her safety and the safety of her infant child, the autopsy should support that narrative. The physical evidence should show signs of a desperate struggle, signs of close-range defensive shooting, signs of someone firing in panic to stop an imminent attack. But that's not what case Me 2025-04824 shows. Not even close. Let's talk about what the Cook County Medical Examiner actually found when they examined Romeca's body. The toxicology report came back first. This is standard procedure in any death investigation, especially one involving violence. You test for everything: alcohol,
Drugs.
prescription medications, anything that might explain impaired judgment or altered behavior. The results for Romeca Meeks Blackman were completely clean. 0 substances in her system. No alcohol in her blood. No drugs in her urine. Nothing that would suggest she was intoxicated or impaired in any way that morning. This matters because it eliminates one possible defense narrative. Holly's attorneys can't argue that Romeca was high or drunk and therefore unpredictable or dangerous. She was completely sober when she dropped her son off at school. She was sober when the confrontation started. She was sober when she died. A clear-headed mother on a Monday morning who had just kissed her child goodbye. Now, let's examine the wounds themselves. The official autopsy documents them as gunshot wound number 1 and gunshot wound number 2. The report specifically notes that the numbering is arbitrary and doesn't indicate order of infliction or severity. Both wounds were examined in forensic detail. Both wounds tell a story that contradicts self-defense. Gunshot wound number 1 was to the right side of Romeca's chin. The entrance wound measured exactly 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. A clean entry point. The location was precisely documented. 8¼ inches below the top of her head, 3/4 of an inch to the right of the center line of her face. There was marginal abrasion around the wound, which is normal for any bullet entry. But here's the critical finding that should make everyone pause. The surrounding skin showed no evidence of soot deposition. No evidence of gunpowder stippling. None. If you're not familiar with forensic pathology, let me explain why this matters so much. When a gun is fired, it doesn't just shoot a bullet. It also expels burning gunpowder, smoke, and debris. If you fire a gun while it's pressed against someone's skin, you get a contact wound with distinctive marking. If you fire from a few inches away, the burning powder particles embed in the skin, creating a pattern called stippling. If you fire from slightly further but still close range, you get soot deposition, a darkening of the skin from the smoke. The complete absence of both stippling and soot deposition means the gun was fired from at least 6 inches away.
Possibly further.
This was not a contact wound. This was not someone firing during a physical struggle over the weapon. This was someone standing back, aiming and shooting. The bullet's path through Romeca's body was meticulously traced. It traveled front to back. It went through the soft tissue of her chin, through the inside of her mouth, fractured her mandible completely, continued through the soft tissue of the right side of her neck, and finally lodged in her cervical spine. Her jawbone was broken by the impact. The bullet came to rest in the vertebrae of her neck. The medical examiner recovered deformed copper-colored projectile jacket fragments and deformed gray bullet fragments from her mouth, from the right side of her neck, and from her cervical spine. All of those fragments were placed in a sealed evidence envelope. They were logged. They were photographed. They were handed over to a representative of the Chicago Police Department with a signed receipt. That physical evidence is now sitting in a police evidence locker, waiting to be matched to the murder weapon. When this case goes to trial, a ballistics expert will testify that those fragments came from the gun Holly Johnson was carrying that morning. And there will be no disputing it. Gunshot wound number 2 was to Romeca's left thigh. The entrance wound also measured exactly 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. Same size as the facial wound. Same type of ammunition. The wound was located on the front of her thigh, 25½ inches above the bottom of her left heel. And once again, the surrounding skin showed no evidence of soot deposition or gunpowder stippling. Once again, the gun was fired from a distance. The bullet traveled through her skin, through the soft tissue, and struck her left femur with enough force to fracture it completely. Your femur is the strongest bone in your body. It takes tremendous force to break it. The bullet shattered it and continued through to the back of her thigh, where it was recovered from the soft tissue. The medical examiner also found a small piece of red synthetic material embedded in the wound track, possibly fabric from Romeca's clothing that was driven into her leg by the bullet's impact. Just like the first wound, all the physical evidence was collected, sealed, and turned over to police. The wound path was front to back. Romeca was facing Holly Johnson when the shot was fired. Both wounds share the same characteristics. Both are the same size, suggesting the same weapon and same ammunition. Both show no signs of close-range firing. Both traveled front to back through Romeca's body. Both caused catastrophic injuries. The facial wound fractured her jaw and damaged her spine. The thigh wound fractured her femur and caused massive soft tissue damage. Either wound alone was sufficient to cause death. Together, they were absolutely fatal. The medical examiner could not determine which shot was fired first because both were so devastating. What they could determine with certainty was that Romeca Meeks Blackman was facing her killer when she was shot.
Twice.
From a distance, while completely unarmed. Let me paint you a picture of what the science is telling us. Romeca is standing in the street near State and Cermak. It's approximately 9:30 in the morning. School buses are arriving. Parents are walking their children to class. It's a Monday morning in Chicago. Romeca has just dropped off her 6-year-old son at school. She's getting ready to leave when a vehicle pulls up. Inside that vehicle is Carlos Smith, the father of her child. Also in the vehicle is Holly Johnson, Carlos's new partner, and their 6-month-old baby. An argument erupts. According to witnesses, it's about Carlos. About why he's there. About him not diffusing the situation. According to prosecutors, Carlos physically restrains Romeca. He grabs her. He holds her. One witness describes it as a hug, but it's not affectionate. It's controlling. He's holding her in place. And while Romeca is being restrained by the man she has a protective order against, Holly Johnson makes a decision. She walks back to the vehicle. She retrieves her firearm. She returns to where Romeca is being held. She raises the weapon.
She aims.
She fires. The first bullet strikes Romeca in the face. Front to back trajectory. The impact fractures her jaw. The bullet travels through her mouth and into her spine. Romeca is still standing, still facing forward, still looking at the woman shooting her. Holly fires again. This time the bullet strikes Romeca's left thigh. Front to back trajectory. The impact fractures her femur. Romeca collapses. She falls to the street. Blood is pouring from her face and her leg. Someone calls 911. Paramedics arrive. Romeca is rushed to Stroger Hospital, but it's already too late. At 31 years old, Romeca Meeks Blackman is pronounced dead. The entire sequence of events, from first shot to last breath, takes less than an hour. Here's what happened immediately after the shooting, according to prosecutors. This is the detail that the judge specifically mentioned during Holly Johnson's detention hearing. This is the moment that reveals the shooter's state of mind. After firing 2 fatal shots, after watching Romeca collapse in the street, after seeing the blood and knowing exactly what she had just done, Holly Johnson turned to Carlos Smith and fist-bumped him. Not a horrified reaction. Not shock or trauma, or the kind of emotional breakdown you'd expect from someone who just had to shoot another person in self-defense. A fist bump. A gesture of celebration. Of accomplishment. Of victory. The judge hearing this case said it plainly. Celebrating in the street after shooting someone is not self-defense. And that single action, that moment of triumph after taking a life, tells you everything you need to know about whether Holly Johnson truly feared for her safety. Because people who shoot in genuine self-defense don't celebrate. They shake. They cry. They vomit. They go into shock. They can't believe what they just had to do. They don't fist bump their partner over the body. Holly Johnson was taken into custody that same day, September 8, 2025. She was questioned by police. She gave her statement. And then something happened that would enrage Romeca's family and the entire community. She was released. No charges were filed. The state's attorney's office declined to prosecute. Holly Johnson walked out of the police station and went home. She went back to her life. She continued her pregnancy. She took care of her baby. She lived freely for 3 months while Romeca's body was in the ground and Romeca's son was trying to understand why his mother wasn't coming home. For 90 days, Romeca's mother, Tina McMiller, called the state's attorney's office demanding answers. For 90 days, she got nothing but bureaucratic runaround. For 90 days, she watched her grandson ask questions she couldn't answer while the woman who killed his mother lived freely just miles away. The community responded with outrage. Petitions circulated online. Thousands of people signed. Protests were organized. Romeca's family held vigils outside the state's attorney's office. They wore pink in her memory. They carried signs with her photo. They refused to let her death be forgotten. They refused to accept that her life didn't matter enough for charges to be filed. And slowly, painfully, pressure mounted. The case was reviewed again. Additional witnesses were interviewed. The autopsy was completed. Evidence was analyzed more thoroughly. And finally, on December 3, 2025, nearly 3 months after Romeca's death, Holly Johnson was arrested at her home in Des Plaines. She was 7 weeks pregnant with another child. She was charged with first-degree murder. And this time, she wasn't released. She was taken to Cook County Jail where she remains today, awaiting trial. But even after the arrest, Holly's defense attorneys fought aggressively to get her out. They filed motions arguing for her release on electronic monitoring. They cited her lack of criminal history. They emphasized her concealed carry license and FOID card. They pointed to her pregnancy. They argued that she wasn't a flight risk. They claimed the evidence contradicted the state's narrative. They said she acted in self-defense. The judge denied every motion. Holly Johnson remained in custody. And then the autopsy report became public. Case Me 2025-04824. And with it came scientific evidence that the defense cannot explain away. You can challenge witness testimony. You can argue about who said what. You can question people's motives and memories. But you cannot argue with forensic pathology. You cannot negotiate with bullet trajectories. And you cannot make gunpowder residue appear where it doesn't exist. The absence of soot deposition and stippling on both of Romeca's wounds is damning evidence. It proves the gun was fired from at least 6 inches away. It proves this was not a contact wound. It proves Holly wasn't wrestling with Romeca over the weapon. Because if they were fighting over the gun, if Romeca was grabbing at it, trying to take it, there would be evidence of that struggle. There would be defensive wounds on Romeca's hands. There would be closer-range firing patterns. There would be some indication of physical contact between the two women. But the autopsy shows none of that. What it shows is a woman standing at a distance, firing twice, hitting her target both times with fatal accuracy. 1 shot to the face. 1 shot to the thigh. Both front to back. Both from beyond contact range. That's not panic. That's not desperate self-defense. That's execution. The front-to-back trajectory of both wounds is equally important evidence. It tells us exactly where Romeca was positioned when she was shot. She was facing Holly Johnson. She wasn't running away. She wasn't turning to flee. She wasn't attacking from behind or from the side. She was standing there, looking forward, when 2 bullets entered her body. Think about what that means in the context of self-defense. Illinois law is very specific about when deadly force is justified. You must be in reasonable fear of imminent death or great bodily harm. You must have no reasonable means of retreat. The force you use must be proportional to the threat you're facing. And critically, you cannot be the initial aggressor. If you provoke the confrontation, you cannot then claim self-defense when the confrontation turns violent. Multiple witnesses describe Holly Johnson as the aggressor that morning. They describe her charging at Romeca. They describe her trying to provoke a physical fight. They describe Romeca as not being aggressive, as trying to de-escalate. And they describe Carlos Smith restraining Romeca while Holly walked back to the car to retrieve her weapon. If Romeca was truly the threat, if she was the one being violent and aggressive, why would Carlos be holding her back? Wouldn't it make more sense for him to restrain Holly if she was the one in danger? The witness statements combined with the autopsy evidence paint a very clear picture. Romeca was being held in place by Carlos while Holly retrieved a gun and shot her from a distance. That's not self-defense under any interpretation of Illinois law. That's murder. And the 5 additional charges that have now been added to Holly's case reflect the severity of what prosecutors believe she did. She's no longer facing just 1 count of first-degree murder. She's facing 6 counts total. Each charge carries its own potential sentence. Each charge represents a different legal theory of guilt. And collectively, they represent a prosecution that believes they have overwhelming evidence of intentional killing. Holly Johnson's next court date is approaching rapidly. Her defense team has already indicated they will challenge the admissibility of certain evidence. They will attack the credibility of witnesses. They will argue that Holly acted reasonably based on what she believed at the time. They will try to paint Romeca as the aggressor despite the physical evidence suggesting otherwise. They will emphasize Holly's lack of criminal history and her lawful possession of a firearm. They will present character witnesses who will testify that Holly is a good mother, a responsible person, someone who would never harm another human being except in genuine fear for her life. But all of that testimony will have to overcome the scientific evidence in Case Me 2025-04824. The defense will have to explain how someone in fear for their life maintains enough distance from their attacker to avoid leaving powder residue. They'll have to explain how someone in a desperate struggle fires 2 perfectly aimed shots to 2 different parts of the body. They'll have to explain the front-to-back trajectory of both wounds. And most importantly, they'll have to explain the fist bump. How do you celebrate immediately after killing someone in self-defense? The courtroom dynamics of this trial are going to be fascinating and heartbreaking in equal measure. On one side of the room will be Romeca's family. Her mother, Tina McMiller. Her siblings. Her son's caregivers. They'll sit through every day of testimony. They'll hear every detail of how Romeca died. They'll see the autopsy photos. They'll listen to witnesses describe the shooting. They'll watch the defense attorneys try to convince a jury that Romeca deserved to die. And they'll have to maintain their composure through all of it, knowing that nothing the court does will bring Romeca back. On the other side of the room will be Holly's family. Her parents. Her siblings. The father of her children. They'll be watching a pregnant woman face the possibility of spending the rest of her life in prison. They'll be terrified for her. They'll be convinced she was justified. They'll see her as a victim of circumstances beyond her control. And they'll be hoping desperately that 12 strangers will see it their way. Both families will be destroyed by this trial regardless of the verdict. If Holly is acquitted, Romeca's family will feel like her life didn't matter. Like the justice system failed her. Like her death meant nothing. If Holly is convicted, her family will lose her to the prison system for decades. Her children will grow up without their mother. Her parents will visit her behind glass. Her life will be reduced to a prison ID number. There are no winners in cases like this. There's just different kinds of loss. And that's what makes the choices that led to September 8th so devastating. Because all of this pain, all of this trauma, all of this destruction was completely avoidable. It required choices. Specific decisions made by specific people at specific moments. And now those choices have consequences that will ripple through two families for generations. Let's talk about what those consequences actually look like. Because when we discuss prison sentences in the abstract, it's easy to lose sight of what those numbers mean in human terms. Holly Johnson is facing first-degree murder charges in Illinois. If convicted, the sentencing guidelines are not negotiable. There is a mandatory minimum sentence of 20 years in prison for first-degree murder. But because a firearm was used in the commission of this murder, there is an additional mandatory enhancement of 25 years. That brings the minimum sentence to 45 years. The maximum sentence is natural life, without the possibility of parole. The judge has discretion to sentence anywhere within that range based on aggravating and mitigating factors. Aggravating factors might include the fact that the shooting occurred near a school, that children were present, that the victim was unarmed, that there were multiple shots fired. Mitigating factors might include Holly's lack of criminal history, her status as a mother, her age, her mental state at the time. But even with maximum mitigation, even if the judge imposes the absolute minimum sentence, Holly Johnson is looking at 45 years in prison. Let me make that time frame real for you. 45 years. Holly Johnson is currently 31 years old. Add 45 years. She would be 76 years old when she's released. She would spend her entire 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and most of her 70s behind bars. She would enter prison as a young woman and leave as a senior citizen. Her 6-month-old baby would be 45 years old, old enough to have children of their own, old enough to have lived an entire adult life without their mother present. Her unborn child would never know her outside of prison visits. They would grow up visiting their mother in a correctional facility. They would have memories of talking through glass, of supervised contact, of guards and metal detectors and rules about what you can and cannot bring to visitation. They would never have a normal mother-child relationship. Never have her at their birthday parties or graduation ceremonies or wedding. Never call her when they need advice or comfort. Never bring their own children to grandma's house for the holidays. All of that would be gone. Stolen by the choices made on September 8th. And that's if she gets the minimum sentence. If the judge goes higher, if aggravating factors are found, Holly could receive natural life. That means she would die in prison. She would never be released. She would spend every remaining day of her existence inside the Illinois Department of Corrections. She would become an old woman in prison. She would need medical care as she ages. She would become dependent on the prison healthcare system. She would require assistance with basic daily activities. and eventually she would die there. Her body would be released to her family for burial. That would be the only time she left. Think about what that means. Right now, Holly Johnson can make choices about her day. She can decide what to eat, what to wear, where to go. She has autonomy. She has freedom. If convicted, all of that disappears. Forever. Someone else controls when she wakes up,
When she eats.
when she showers, where she goes, who she talks to, what she wears. Every single aspect of her existence would be regulated by the prison system. And for someone who had freedom, who had a life and a family and plans for the future, that adjustment is brutal beyond description. Illinois has truth in sentencing laws for violent crimes. This is critical to understand. Truth in sentencing means you serve the actual sentence imposed. There is no early release for good behavior. There are no credits that reduce your time. There is no parole board that can set you free after serving a portion of your sentence. If the judge sentences Holly Johnson to 45 years, she will serve 45 years. Every single day. Every single hour. There are extremely limited exceptions to this rule. If you were under 21 at the time of the offense, you can petition for parole review after serving 40 years. But Holly was 31 when she shot Romeca. She doesn't qualify. She will serve 100% of whatever sentence she receives. The only way out is to complete the entire sentence or to die. Those are the only two options. This is the reality that Holly Johnson is facing right now as she sits in Cook County Jail, awaiting trial. This is what her defense attorneys are trying to prevent. This is why they're fighting so hard to get the charges reduced or dismissed. Because they know what conviction means. They know their client is looking at the very real possibility of spending the rest of her life in prison. The irony of Holly's situation is almost painful to contemplate. Before all of this happened, Holly had posted on social media about her career preferences. She made it clear that she never wanted to work in healthcare facilities. She specifically mentioned not wanting jobs that required caring for elderly people. She said that type of work wasn't for her. She had other plans for her life, other ambitions, other dreams. Now look at where she might end up. If she's sentenced to decades in prison, she will grow old inside the Illinois correctional system. She will become one of the elderly inmates she once said she didn't want to work with. She will be dependent on prison healthcare workers to provide for her needs as she ages. She will experience the exact environment she once dismissed, except she won't be the caregiver. She'll be the patient, the inmate, the elderly person requiring assistance. And she'll have no choice in the matter. Life has a way of humbling everyone, sometimes through gentle lessons, sometimes through devastating consequences. Holly Johnson is about to learn a lesson about hubris and choice and consequence that will define the rest of her existence. Women's prisons in Illinois are difficult environments. The main facility is Logan Correctional Center in Lincoln, Illinois. It houses approximately 2,000 women. Reports from inside Logan paint a troubling picture. The facility was converted from a men's prison in 2013, and the transition has been problematic. There have been documented issues with the physical condition of the buildings, plumbing problems, heating and cooling failures, infrastructure decay. There have been reports of overcrowding, of inadequate medical care, of staff shortages, of violence between inmates. This is not a comfortable place. This is not a place designed for human dignity. This is a place designed to warehouse people who have been removed from society. And if Holly Johnson is convicted, this is where she'll spend potentially the next several decades of her life. The daily reality of prison is grinding and relentless. You wake when they tell you to wake. You eat what they give you to eat. You wear what they tell you to wear. You go where they tell you to go. Privacy doesn't exist. You shower in open rooms with other inmates. You use the toilet while others watch. You sleep in a cell with another person inches away. Every conversation can be overheard. Every movement is monitored. Every aspect of your life is controlled by someone else. For the first few months, maybe the first few years, you fight it mentally. You tell yourself you're not really there. You count down the days. You plan for release. You maintain hope that somehow the sentence will be reduced or overturned. But as the years pile up, as the appeals are denied, as the reality settles in that this is your life now, something shifts. The prison becomes your world. The outside becomes a memory. You adjust because you have to. You find ways to cope because the alternative is madness. You create a routine. You find small pleasures in commissary snacks or television shows. You form alliances with other inmates for protection and companionship. You learn the rules, both official and unspoken. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the person you were before prison fades. You become an inmate. Your identity becomes your crime. You are no longer Holly Johnson, human being with a history and a personality and dreams. You are inmate Johnson, convicted murderer, serving natural life. The cost of incarcerating people long-term is staggering, both financially and humanly. Studies show that 12% of Illinois prison inmates are over age 55. Many have significant health problems: diabetes, heart disease, mobility issues, chronic pain, mental health conditions exacerbated by decades of incarceration. The prison system was never designed to be a geriatric care facility, but that's exactly what it becomes for long-term inmates. As Holly Johnson ages in prison, if she's convicted, her medical needs will increase. She'll require more healthcare, more medications, possibly mobility assistance, possibly specialized care for age-related conditions. And all of that will be provided by the very system she's trapped in. The prison medical staff, the prison pharmacy, the prison hospital. She'll be completely dependent on the state for her survival. No choice in her doctors. No say in her treatment. No ability to seek second opinions or advocate effectively for herself. Just whatever care the system decides to provide. This is what happens when you age in prison. You become invisible. Society forgets about you. Your family's visits become less frequent as they age and deal with their own lives. Your friends stop writing. The world moves on without you. And you grow old in a 6x8 cell, wondering how your life became this. Meanwhile, back in Chicago, Romeca's family continues living with a different kind of sentence. A life sentence of grief. A permanent absence that never gets easier. Tina McMiller is now raising her grandson full-time. Little Carlos is 7 years old now. He's in 2nd grade. He should be worried about homework and recess and making friends. Instead, he's trying to process why his mother isn't coming home. Why she's not there to help with his schoolwork. Why she's not there to tuck him in at night. Why she's not there to write him notes in his lunchbox anymore. Tina has said publicly that her grandson is struggling. That he's shut down emotionally. That he doesn't want to be around people. That he's withdrawing into himself. This is what childhood trauma looks like. This is the invisible wound that never fully heals. This little boy will carry this loss for the rest of his life. It will shape his relationships, his ability to trust, his sense of security in the world. He will always be the kid whose mom was murdered outside his school. That will be part of his identity, whether he wants it to be or not. In December, a community organization reached out to help. They decorated Tina's home for the holidays. They brought toys and gifts for Carlos. They presented Tina with a $3,500 check to help with expenses. The community rallied. People donated. Neighbors showed up. Strangers sent cards and messages of support. And all of it was appreciated. All of it helped in small ways. But none of it brings Romeca back. None of it makes Carlos's loss easier to bear. None of it changes the fundamental reality that a child lost his mother, and no amount of money or community support can fix that wound. Tina McMiller is now 60-something years old, raising a young child. She should be enjoying her retirement. Instead, she's back to parent-teacher conferences and homework and bedtime routines. She's doing it with love. She's doing it with dedication. But she's also doing it with a broken heart. Because every time she looks at her grandson, she sees her daughter. Every milestone he reaches is a reminder that Romeca isn't there to witness it. Every achievement, every struggle, every ordinary day is colored by absence. Romeca's sister has spoken publicly about how the family is coping. She said, "Carlos may be hurt for the rest of his life, but we make sure he sees rainbows in his clouds.
Nothing will ever change about that.
There is nothing he needs that we cannot provide. He is perfectly well. He is happy. He is thriving. And even when he feels his lowest, we pull him out of it together like we do with each other. That's the kind of strength that trauma demands. The kind of forced resilience that grief requires. You don't get to fall apart because a child needs you. You don't get to wallow in your own pain because someone else's pain is greater. You stand up. You show up. You keep going. Not because you want to, but because you have to. And you find ways to make meaning out of senseless loss. You celebrate the small victories. You protect the child from the worst of the truth while still being honest. You create new traditions to replace the ones that are broken. You build a new normal from the wreckage of the old one. And you do it day after day after day, because there's no other choice. The family has been very vocal about wanting justice for Romeca. They filled the courtroom during Holly's detention hearing. They wore pink, Romeca's favorite color. They made their presence known. They wanted the judge to see that Romeca mattered, that her life had value, that people loved her and miss her and will never stop fighting for her. Their presence was a statement. A refusal to let Romeca be reduced to a case number or a statistic or a forgotten victim. They are determined to keep her memory alive, to make sure the court understands the human cost of what happened on September 8th, to ensure that when the jury deliberates, they're thinking about a real person with a real family and a real child who needs her. Not just a name in court documents, not just a body in autopsy photos, but a daughter, a mother, a sister, a human being who deserved to live. The trial itself is still months away. There will be more hearings before then, more motions filed, more legal arguments, more delays. The criminal justice system moves slowly, especially in murder cases. Every piece of evidence has to be reviewed. Every witness has to be interviewed. Every legal theory has to be tested. The defense will file motions to suppress evidence. They'll challenge the admissibility of witness statements. They'll argue that certain testimony is prejudicial or unreliable. The prosecution will oppose those motions. They'll fight to get all the evidence in front of the jury. They'll argue that the evidence is relevant and necessary for the jury to understand what really happened. The judge will rule on each motion. Some evidence will be allowed. Some might be excluded. And slowly, the shape of the trial will emerge. We'll learn what the jury will hear and what they won't. What arguments the defense will make and how the prosecution will respond. All of it building toward the moment when 12 strangers sit in a jury box and are asked to decide, was this murder or self-defense? That question is the entire case. Everything else is just supporting evidence for one conclusion or the other. The prosecution will argue murder. They'll present the autopsy report showing the distance of the shots and the trajectory of the bullets. They'll present witness testimony describing Holly as the aggressor. They'll present evidence of the fist bump celebration. They'll argue that Holly had options, that she could have stayed in her car, that she could have driven away, that she could have called 911, that she chose instead to retrieve her weapon and shoot an unarmed woman twice from a distance. They'll argue that the pattern of injuries proves this was intentional killing, not defensive reaction. They'll ask the jury to hold Holly accountable for a choice that ended Romeca's life and devastated a family. The defense will argue self-defense. They'll present evidence of the stalking no-contact order. They'll argue that Holly had reason to fear Romeca. They'll present character witnesses testifying that Holly is a peaceful, law-abiding person. They'll argue that in the moment, Holly believed she was in danger. They'll emphasize that Holly had a legal right to carry a weapon. They'll ask the jury to put themselves in Holly's position and imagine how they would have responded to perceived threat. Both sides will present expert witnesses. The prosecution will have a forensic pathologist explain the autopsy findings in detail. That expert will testify about what the absence of soot deposition and stippling means. They'll explain the significance of front-to-back trajectory. They'll walk the jury through each wound and what it tells us about the circumstances of the shooting. The defense will likely present their own forensic expert to challenge those conclusions or offer alternative interpretations. They might argue that distance can be difficult to determine from autopsy findings alone. They might suggest that the absence of powder residue could have other explanations. They might try to create doubt about the prosecution's timeline of events. The jury will have to weigh competing expert opinions and decide which version makes more sense given all the evidence. The prosecution will also present the physical evidence recovered from Romeca's body. The deformed bullet fragments, the copper-colored projectile jackets, the synthetic material from her clothing. All of it will be photographed and displayed for the jury. A ballistics expert will testify about matching those fragments to the weapon. They'll explain how they can determine what gun fired those particular bullets. And if the fragments match Holly's weapon conclusively, that's powerful evidence that she fired the fatal shots. Witness testimony will be critical to both sides. The prosecution has multiple witnesses who saw the confrontation. They'll testify about what they observed, about who seemed aggressive and who seemed defensive, about whether Romeca appeared to be threatening Holly or whether Holly appeared to be provoking Romeca, about what Carlos was doing during the confrontation, about the sequence of events leading up to the shooting. Each witness will be cross-examined aggressively by the defense. Their credibility will be challenged. Their memory will be questioned. Any inconsistencies in their statements will be highlighted. The defense will try to show that these witnesses are unreliable or biased or mistaken about what they saw. The prosecution will rehabilitate their witnesses on redirect examination. They'll explain any inconsistencies. They'll bolster their credibility. They'll make sure the jury understands why these people's testimony matters. One of the prosecution's most important witnesses will be Carlos Smith himself. He was there when it happened. He was allegedly restraining Romeca when Holly retrieved the gun. He allegedly fist-bumped Holly after the shooting. His testimony could be devastating to the defense, but it could also be problematic for the prosecution, depending on what he says. Carlos has already given conflicting accounts of what happened that morning. At a recent court hearing, he denied the prosecution's version of events. He said he didn't put Romeca in a chokehold. He said he didn't assault her with a car door. He said he's tired of the lies about what he allegedly did. But the prosecution has other evidence suggesting Carlos did physically restrain Romeca. They have witness statements describing him holding her. They have documented history of Carlos restraining Romeca in previous incidents. Court records from 2022 show an incident where Carlos grabbed Romeca in a hugging manner and she made impact with a wall during the struggle. The pattern of behavior is there. Carlos has a history of putting his hands on Romeca. And on September 8th, prosecutors believe he did it again with fatal consequences. If Carlos testifies for the defense and denies restraining Romeca, the prosecution will impeach him with his prior inconsistent statements. They'll show the jury that he's changed his story. They'll present evidence of his history of violence toward Romeca. They'll argue that he's protecting Holly and himself by lying under oath. The jury will have to decide whether to believe Carlos or the other witnesses who contradict him. The defense may also call Holly Johnson to testify in her own defense. This is always a risky decision in a murder trial. If Holly takes the stand, she'll have to explain her actions that morning. She'll have to describe what she was thinking and feeling. She'll have to tell the jury why she believed she was in danger. She'll have to account for the fist bump. She'll have to explain why she didn't retreat or call police or do anything other than shoot Romeca twice. And she'll be subject to cross-examination by the prosecution. They'll ask her pointed questions about the distance of the shots, about why she walked back to the car to get the gun instead of leaving, about whether she aimed carefully before firing, about what Romeca was doing when she pulled the trigger, about what she said to Carlos after the shooting. Every answer will be scrutinized. Every inconsistency will be highlighted. And if Holly makes any admissions that support the prosecution's theory, it could be devastating to her defense. Many defense attorneys advise their clients not to testify for exactly this reason. It's too risky. The prosecution is too skilled at cross-examination. One wrong answer could mean the difference between acquittal and conviction. But sometimes defendants insist on testifying because they want the jury to hear their side directly. They want to look the jurors in the eye and explain themselves. They believe their sincerity will come through. Whether Holly testifies or not will be a strategic decision made by her and her attorneys as the trial approaches. The jury selection process will be crucial in this case. Both sides will be looking for jurors who might be sympathetic to their arguments. The prosecution will want jurors who understand domestic violence, who know that abuse can happen in relationships, who won't automatically assume the person with a gun was justified. The defense will want jurors who believe in the right to self-defense, who own guns themselves, who can imagine being in a situation where they might need to use deadly force. Both sides will have a limited number of peremptory challenges to strike jurors they don't want. Both sides will also be able to strike jurors for cause if they demonstrate clear bias. The attorneys will question potential jurors carefully during voir dire. They'll ask about their views on guns, on self-defense, on domestic violence, on whether they can be fair to both sides despite the emotional nature of the case. And slowly, through that process, they'll select 12 people and a few alternates who will hold Holly Johnson's fate in their hands. Those 12 people will sit through weeks of testimony. They'll see graphic autopsy photos. They'll hear witnesses describe a violent death. They'll have to remain impartial while both families sit in the courtroom watching their every reaction. And at the end of it all, they'll be asked to deliberate and reach a unanimous verdict. The deliberation process is where everything comes together. The jury will be given instructions by the judge about the law they must apply. They'll be told what the elements of first-degree murder are. They'll be told what the elements of self-defense are. They'll be told what standard of proof they must use. Beyond a reasonable doubt. Not absolute certainty, but proof that leaves you firmly convinced of the defendant's guilt. No reasonable doubt about whether she committed murder. The jury will review the evidence. They'll look at the autopsy photos again. They'll read transcripts of key testimony. They'll examine the physical evidence. They'll debate among themselves what the evidence proves. Some jurors will be convinced of guilt immediately. Others will have doubts. They'll argue. They'll discuss. They'll try to persuade each other. And eventually, they'll either reach consensus or they won't. If they can't reach a unanimous verdict, it's a hung jury. The judge will declare a mistrial. The prosecution will have to decide whether to retry the case. And both families will have to go through the entire traumatic process again. If they do reach a unanimous verdict, the foreperson will inform the judge. Everyone will be called back into the courtroom. Holly will stand as the verdict is read. And in that moment, her entire future will be decided. If the verdict is not guilty, Holly will be free to go. The charges will be dismissed. She cannot be tried again for the same crime. She'll walk out of the courtroom and try to rebuild her life. But she'll always be the woman who shot Romeca Meeks Blackman. Even if legally acquitted, the court of public opinion is less forgiving. People will remember. They'll judge. They'll question how someone could kill another person and walk free. Holly will have to live with that for the rest of her life. And Romeca's family will have to live with the knowledge that the person who killed their loved one faced no legal consequences. That pain doesn't go away. It calcifies into bitterness and rage, and a sense that the system failed them. If the verdict is guilty, Holly will be immediately taken into custody. She'll be held pending sentencing. The prosecution will prepare a sentencing memorandum arguing for the maximum penalty. The defense will prepare a memorandum arguing for the minimum. Both sides will call witnesses at the sentencing hearing. The prosecution will call Romeca's family members to give victim impact statements. They'll describe what Romeca meant to them, how her death has affected their lives, what they want the court to know about the person they lost. It will be heartbreaking testimony. Tina McMiller will likely testify about raising her grandson without his mother, about the questions he asks that she can't answer, about the hole in their family that will never be filled. The defense will call character witnesses on Holly's behalf, people who will testify that she's a good person, that this was an aberration, that she deserves mercy. They'll talk about her children who need their mother, about her potential for rehabilitation, about the circumstances that led to this tragedy. The judge will listen to all of it. They'll review the pre-sentence investigation report prepared by probation officers. They'll consider the aggravating and mitigating factors. And then they'll impose sentence. In Illinois, for first-degree murder with a firearm, the range is 45 years to natural life. The judge will announce the sentence in open court. Holly will hear her fate. Her family will react. Romeca's family will react. And regardless of what sentence is imposed, someone will feel it's not enough or too much. There's no sentence that will make everyone feel justice was served, because justice in murder cases is imperfect at best. You can punish the offender, but you can't restore the victim. You can lock someone away, but it doesn't bring the dead back to life. You can impose decades of incarceration, but it doesn't heal the trauma of the families left behind. All you can do is apply the law as fairly as possible and hope that it provides some sense of accountability and closure. Here's what keeps me up at night about this case: the absolute preventability of it all. September 8th, 2025, didn't have to end in death. At multiple points that morning, different choices could have changed everything. If Carlos hadn't pulled up near the school where he knew Romeca would be, the confrontation never happens. If Holly had stayed in the car with her baby when the argument started, Romeca is still alive. If Carlos hadn't allegedly restrained Romeca, she could have walked away. If Holly had called 911 instead of retrieving her gun, police would have responded and de-escalated the situation. If Holly had fired a warning shot instead of aiming at Romeca's body, maybe Romeca would have fled. Any one of those choices, made differently, and we're not here. Romeca is still alive. Holly isn't facing murder charges. Carlos isn't facing scrutiny about his role. The children still have their mothers. The families aren't destroyed. But those choices weren't made. At each decision point, the path toward violence was chosen instead of the path toward de-escalation. And now we're left with the aftermath. A dead woman. A defendant facing life in prison. Children without mothers. Families shattered. And a community asking how this keeps happening. Because this isn't an isolated case. This is a pattern that plays out again and again in domestic violence situations. Man has relationships with multiple women. Women become rivals. Tension builds. Someone feels threatened or disrespected or replaced. Emotions escalate, and violence erupts. Sometimes it's fists. Sometimes it's weapons. Sometimes it ends in death. We've seen this story before. We'll see it again. The names and details change, but the structure remains the same. And every single time, it's preventable. Every single time, there are off-ramps that could lead away from tragedy. But those off-ramps require things that are hard for people in crisis to access. Emotional regulation, de-escalation skills, willingness to walk away, ability to prioritize safety over pride, understanding that no argument is worth a life. These are skills that need to be taught. These are interventions that need to be available. These are community resources that need to exist. Because criminal prosecution after the fact doesn't prevent the next case. It just punishes the last one. The psychological question at the heart of this case is one that applies to all of us. At what point does normal human emotion become dangerous?
We all feel jealousy.
We all experience anger. We all have moments where we're hurt or threatened or afraid. For most people, those feelings pass. You feel them, you sit with them, you process them, and they fade. You don't act on them. You don't let them control your behavior. You recognize them as temporary emotional states that don't require external action. But for some people, those feelings don't pass. They intensify. They become obsessive. They start driving decisions. And at some point, the person crosses a line from feeling to acting. From thinking about violence to planning violence to committing violence. Where is that line? What happens in the brain when someone crosses it? These are questions that forensic psychologists and criminologists have studied for decades. There are risk factors we can identify: history of violence, substance abuse, mental health issues,
Trauma.
social isolation, access to weapons. But plenty of people have those risk factors and never hurt anyone. And some people with no apparent risk factors commit horrific violence. We can't predict with certainty who will cross that line. All we can do is recognize the warning signs and intervene when possible. In Holly Johnson's case, there were warning signs. She filed a stalking no-contact order against Romeca in 2024. That suggests she felt threatened or harassed. That suggests conflict between the two women was escalating. That could have been an opportunity for intervention. Court-ordered mediation. Supervised exchanges if the women needed to interact regarding Carlos and the children. Clear boundaries about contact. resources for both women about de-escalation and conflict resolution. But those interventions didn't happen, or they weren't effective, or they weren't taken seriously. And the conflict continued to build until September 8th, when it exploded into violence. Romeca also had a protective order against Carlos. She felt unsafe around him. She had documented his history of putting hands on her. She knew he was dangerous. But protective orders are just paper. They don't create a force field. They don't prevent someone from showing up where you are. They don't stop violence from happening. They just create legal consequences after the fact. And those consequences don't help if you're already dead. This is the fundamental limitation of the legal system in domestic violence cases. It can punish. It can incarcerate. It can issue orders. But it cannot prevent determined people from hurting each other. The jealousy dynamic in this case is particularly interesting from a psychological perspective. Holly and Romeca both had children with the same man. That creates an inherent connection that neither of them chose. They're bound together through Carlos whether they want to be or not. Their children are half-siblings. They'll potentially interact for years at holidays and family events and school functions. That forced connection can breed resentment, especially if Carlos is still involved with both women romantically, or if he's playing them against each other, or if he's creating drama and instability. And according to court records and witness statements, Carlos was absolutely creating drama. He had a protective order against him from Romeca, but showed up near her anyway. He pulled up with Holly and their baby in the car, knowing Romeca would be there. He allegedly put his hands on Romeca during the confrontation. He allegedly fist-bumped Holly after she shot Romeca. If all of that is true, Carlos is not an innocent bystander in this tragedy. He's a central actor who helped create the conditions for violence. But even acknowledging Carlos's role, Holly still made a choice. She chose to retrieve her weapon. She chose to walk back to the confrontation. She chose to aim and fire.
Twice.
Those were her decisions. Carlos didn't make them for her. Romeca didn't force her hand. Holly's brain processed the situation, weighed the options, and selected violence.
Why?
What was happening in her mind in those moments? Did she genuinely believe she was in mortal danger? Did she see Romeca as a threat to her baby? Was she reacting to perceived aggression or provocation? Or was this something else? Was this jealousy and rage and resentment finally finding an outlet? Was this a calculated decision to eliminate a rival? Was this someone who had convinced herself that Romeca's existence was a problem that needed solving? We may never know the true answer. Holly might not even know herself. People are remarkably good at rationalizing their own behavior, at constructing narratives that make them the hero or the victim even when they're the aggressor. Holly might genuinely believe she acted in self-defense. She might have convinced herself that she had no choice, that Romeca was dangerous, that shooting her was necessary. The human brain is capable of extraordinary self-deception when the alternative is confronting your own capacity for evil. And that's the most unsettling truth about this case. Holly Johnson wasn't a monster. She wasn't some cartoonish villain with no redeeming qualities. She was an ordinary person, a mother, someone with no criminal history, someone who legally owned a firearm, someone who probably saw herself as a good person making reasonable choices. And that ordinariness is what should terrify all of us. Because if an ordinary person can convince themselves that murder is justified, what does that say about the rest of us? We all like to think we'd never cross that line. We'd never hurt someone. We'd never let anger or jealousy or fear control us to that degree. But the truth is that the difference between Holly Johnson and anyone else might be smaller than we want to believe. It might just be a few bad decisions. A few moments where we chose escalation instead of de-escalation. A few times where we fed destructive emotions instead of starving them. We want to believe that murderers are fundamentally different from us, that they're wired wrong, that they have something broken inside that normal people don't have. And sometimes that's true. But sometimes murderers are just ordinary people who made terrible choices in moments of crisis. And that possibility is much scarier than the idea of irredeemable monsters. Romeca Meeks Blackman was also an ordinary person. She wasn't a saint. She had flaws and struggles like everyone does. Court records show she had conflicts with Carlos over the years. There were allegations and protective orders and documented incidents. She was navigating a complicated situation with a man who had children with multiple women. She was trying to co-parent with someone she felt unsafe around. She was dealing with jealousy from a woman she'd never even met in person. None of that was easy, and she probably didn't handle every situation perfectly.
But she also didn't deserve to die.
She didn't deserve to be shot twice in the street outside her son's school. She didn't deserve to have her life reduced to a case number and an autopsy report. She deserved to watch her son grow up. She deserved to finish nursing school. She deserved to build the life she was working toward. And all of that was taken from her on September 8th by someone who made a choice. A choice that cannot be unmade. A choice with permanent, irreversible consequences. The autopsy report makes all of this undeniable. Case Me 2025-04824 is a scientific document. It's not influenced by emotion or bias or competing narratives. It's just facts, measurements, observations, analysis. And those facts tell a clear story. Romeca was shot from a distance. No soot, no stippling. The gun was at least 6 inches away, probably further. Both bullets entered from the front. Romeca was facing her killer. One bullet fractured her jaw and lodged in her spine. One bullet fractured her femur. Both wounds were fatal on their own. Together, they were absolutely catastrophic. Romeca was completely sober. Nothing in her system. She was clear-headed. She wasn't impaired. She wasn't out of control. She was a mother who had just dropped her son off at school and found herself in a confrontation she didn't choose and couldn't survive. The bullet fragments have been recovered. They're in police custody. They'll be matched to the weapon. The evidence is there. It's documented. It's irrefutable. And it will be presented to a jury who will have to decide what it means. Does the evidence support self-defense? Can you reasonably fear for your life from someone 6 inches away who isn't touching you? Can you claim you had no choice when you walked back to your vehicle to retrieve your weapon? Can you argue necessity when the person you shot was facing you, not lunging at you, not attacking you? These are the questions the jury will wrestle with. And the answers aren't as simple as they might seem. Because self-defense law is complicated. It requires reasonable belief of imminent danger. It requires proportional response. It requires that you didn't create the dangerous situation yourself. And all of those elements are subjective. What's reasonable to one person might not be reasonable to another. What feels like imminent danger to someone in fear might not actually be imminent. What seems proportional in the moment might look excessive in hindsight. The jury will have to put themselves in Holly's position. They'll have to ask what they would have done, how they would have responded, whether they would have felt threatened enough to shoot. And different jurors will have different answers based on their own life experiences and values and biases. This is why jury selection matters so much. This is why both sides will fight over which 12 people sit in that box. Because those 12 people's life experiences will shape how they interpret the evidence. Someone who has experienced domestic violence might see Romeca as a victim and Holly as an aggressor. Someone who owns guns and believes strongly in self-defense might see Holly as justified and Romeca as threatening. Someone who has lost a family member to violence might identify with Romeca's family and want justice. Someone who has children might identify with Holly's fear for her baby and want to quit. We all bring our own lens to every situation we evaluate. We can't help it. It's human nature. And the attorneys on both sides know this. They'll try to select jurors whose lenses might favor their side. They'll try to exclude jurors whose lenses might hurt them. And the final jury will be some combination of personalities and backgrounds and experiences that will blend together in deliberation to produce a verdict. What that verdict will be, I cannot predict. I can tell you what the evidence suggests. I can tell you what the autopsy proves. I can tell you what witnesses have said. But I cannot tell you how 12 strangers will weigh all of that and reach a conclusion. Maybe they'll see this as murder, intentional killing, premeditated violence, and they'll convict Holly of first-degree murder. Maybe they'll see this as imperfect self-defense, Someone who genuinely but unreasonably believed she was in danger. And they'll convict on a lesser charge like second-degree murder or manslaughter. Maybe they'll see this as justified self-defense. Someone who acted reasonably to protect herself and her child. And they'll acquit entirely. Or maybe they won't be able to agree. Maybe they'll deadlock. Hung jury. Mistrial. And we'll go through this entire process again with a new jury. All of those outcomes are possible. All of them depend on human judgment and human interpretation of ambiguous circumstances. And that's the fundamental uncertainty at the heart of our criminal justice system. We ask ordinary people to make extraordinary decisions about other people's lives. We give them evidence and instructions, and we hope they get it right. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. And we won't know which this will be until the verdict is read. But regardless of what the jury decides, some truths remain. Romeca Meeks Blackman is dead. Her son is growing up without his mother. Her family is devastated. Holly Johnson is facing decades in prison. Her children are growing up without their mother. Her family is devastated. 2 families destroyed. Multiple children traumatized. A community shaken. And all of it stemming from decisions made in moments of anger and fear and jealousy and pride. All of it preventable if different choices had been made. This is the tragedy of cases like this. There are no winners. There's no outcome that makes anyone whole. You can punish Holly with prison, but it doesn't bring Romeca back. You can acquit Holly, but it doesn't restore the life she had before September 8th. The damage is done. The consequences are permanent. And all anyone can do is try to move forward carrying the weight of what happened. I started this by talking about the last happy photograph. Romeca holding her son, both of them laughing, taken one day before she died. That image will haunt me, because she had no idea. She was just living her life, being a mom, looking forward to the future. And within hours, it was all gone. That's the fragility of life that we all try not to think about. How quickly everything can change. How one person's decision can end another person's story. How ordinary mornings can become extraordinary tragedies. Romeca woke up on September 8th and packed her son's lunch and wrote him a note and dropped him off at school. Normal mom stuff. Routine activities. Nothing suggesting that day would be different from any other. And then Carlos pulled up. And Holly got out of the car. And choices were made. And Romeca never went home. Her son never saw her again. The lunchbox note became the last communication. The last words. I love you. You make me proud. Have a great day. Those words, meant to encourage a 6-year-old through a Monday, became a final message. A permanent goodbye. The last thing his mother ever said to him, written in her handwriting, tucked into his lunchbox. He probably has that note somewhere. Kept safe. Read and reread. A tangible piece of his mother that he can hold when the absence becomes too heavy. What haunts me about this case, beyond the tragedy of Romeca's death, is the question of inevitability. Was there a single moment where this outcome became unavoidable? Or were there multiple moments, multiple opportunities to change course? When Holly filed for the stalking order against Romeca, was that the beginning of the end? Or could intervention at that point have prevented September 8th? When Carlos pulled up near the school that morning, was tragedy already inevitable? Or could he have driven away and changed everything? When the argument started, when tensions escalated, was there still time to de-escalate? Or had too much momentum built up? When Holly walked back to her car to get the gun, was Romeca's death already certain? Or could Holly have changed her mind, driven away, chosen differently? I don't know the answer. Maybe there was one critical moment. Maybe there were many. Maybe from a certain point, the trajectory was set and nothing could have altered it. Or maybe every single second offered a chance to choose differently, and those chances were ignored or missed or rejected. These are the kinds of questions that survivors ask themselves. The what-ifs that torture people for years. What if I'd said something different? What if I'd called police sooner? What if I'd convinced her not to go that day? What if? What if? What if? And there are never good answers because you can't replay the past. You can only live with the consequences of what actually happened. Tina McMiller will ask herself these questions for the rest of her life. What if she'd been there that morning? What if she'd answered Romeca's call? What if she'd convinced Romeca to stay home? Could she have prevented it? The answer is probably no. But she'll never stop wondering. That's the burden survivors carry. The weight of imagined alternative timelines where their loved one is still alive. Where different choices led to different outcomes. Where tragedy was averted. Those timelines feel real, even though they're not. And the gap between what is and what might have been is where grief lives. Holly's family will also ask themselves questions. What if they'd known what was building? What if they'd intervened? What if they'd convinced Holly to leave Carlos, to move away, to avoid the situation entirely? Could they have prevented her from making the choice that will define the rest of her life? Again, probably not. But they'll wonder. They'll replay conversations. They'll remember warning signs they missed or ignored. They'll torture themselves with the knowledge that their daughter, their sister, their loved one made a choice that cannot be unmade. And they'll have to live with that knowledge while visiting her in prison, while raising her children, while dealing with the community judgment and the media attention and the weight of it all. The children in this case will carry their own burdens. Romeca's son will grow up with a mother-shaped hole in his life. Every milestone will be colored by her absence. Every achievement will be bittersweet because she's not there to witness it. He'll have questions that his grandmother can't fully answer. Why did this happen? Why did someone hurt my mom? Why didn't anyone stop it? And as he gets older, as he understands more, those questions will evolve. He'll grapple with anger and grief and the unfairness of losing his mother to senseless violence. He'll struggle with trust and security and relationships because his foundational relationship was severed so early. And he'll have to decide what to do with that pain.
How to carry it.
How to integrate it into his identity without letting it destroy him. That's asking a lot of a child. It's asking a lot of any human being. Holly's children will carry different burdens. They'll grow up visiting their mother in prison. They'll have to explain to friends and classmates why their mom isn't around. They'll be the children of a convicted murderer if she's convicted. That stigma will follow them. Kids will whisper. Parents will judge. They'll be seen through the lens of their mother's crime regardless of who they are as individuals. And as they get older, they'll have to reconcile the mother they love with the person who killed someone. How do you hold both of those truths? How do you love someone who did something unforgivable? How do you process the fact that your mother is in prison because she shot another mother? These are questions no child should have to answer. But Holly's children will spend their lives wrestling with them. So where does that leave us? With a case that's heading toward trial. With evidence that suggests murder, but a defendant claiming self-defense. With 2 families destroyed and multiple children traumatized. With a community demanding justice and a legal system trying to provide it. With questions about human nature and choice and responsibility and consequence. With the knowledge that none of this had to happen, but all of it did. And with the sobering reality that cases like this will keep happening as long as we fail to address the underlying dynamics that create them. The jealousy, the possessiveness, the male manipulation, the easy access to weapons, the normalization of violence as conflict resolution, the lack of intervention resources, the failure to take protective orders seriously, the cultural messages that tell us some emotions justify action. All of these factors contribute to tragedies like September 8th. And until we address them systemically, individual prosecutions won't prevent the next case. They'll just punish the last one. The jury in Holly Johnson's trial will not be asked to solve those systemic problems. They'll be asked a much simpler question. Did Holly Johnson commit murder? Did she intentionally kill Romeca Meeks Blackman without legal justification? The evidence suggests yes. The autopsy proves the shots were fired from a distance. The trajectory proves Romeca was facing forward. The absence of substances proves Romeca was sober. The witness statements suggest Holly was the aggressor. The fist bump suggests celebration, not trauma. The prosecution has built a strong case for intentional killing. But the defense will argue fear. They'll argue that Holly genuinely believed she was in danger. They'll argue that a concealed carry license exists for exactly this reason, to protect yourself when threatened. They'll argue that Holly made a split-second decision under stress, and that decision should be judged by what she knew in that moment, not what we know now with the benefit of hindsight and investigation. And some jurors might find that argument persuasive. Some might put themselves in Holly's position and decide they would have felt threatened too. Some might believe that Romeca's history with Carlos suggested she was unpredictable or dangerous. Some might think Holly had reason to fear. And if even one juror believes that if even one person holds out for acquittal, it's a hung jury. But I keep coming back to the autopsy. Case Me 2025-04824. The clean, clinical language that describes catastrophic violence. The measurements and trajectories that tell a story independent of anyone's interpretation. Romeca Meeks Blackman was shot twice, from at least 6 inches away, front to back, once in the face, once in the thigh. Both shots fatal. No soot, no stippling, no signs of close-range struggle, just deliberate shooting from a distance. You can argue about emotion and fear and justification all you want, but you cannot argue with the physics of bullets and the biology of wounds. The science tells us what happened. And what happened was execution, not self-defense. That's what I believe. That's what the evidence suggests. But 12 strangers will make the final determination, and we'll all have to live with whatever they decide. Until then, Romeca's family waits. They wait for trial dates. They wait for justice. They wait for some sense that Romeca's life mattered to a system that let her killer walk free for 3 months. They wait while raising her son, while honoring her memory, while trying to heal wounds that will never fully close. Holly's family also waits. They wait to see if their loved one will spend the rest of her life in prison. They wait while raising her children, while supporting her through pretrial detention, while hoping for an outcome that seems increasingly unlikely. Both families bound together by tragedy, by one moment, by choices that cannot be unmade. And somewhere in all of this, there's a lesson about human nature and violence and consequence, about how ordinary emotions can lead to extraordinary destruction, about how the distance between feeling and acting is sometimes measured in inches, about how the choices we make in moments of crisis define the rest of our lives, about how fragile life is and how permanent death is, and how much damage one person can do with one weapon in one moment of rage or fear or jealousy. These are uncomfortable truths. We don't want to believe we're capable of such destruction. We want to think we're better than that we'd make different choices, that we'd choose de-escalation over violence. And maybe we would. Maybe most of us would. But Holly Johnson probably thought she would too, right up until the moment she didn't. And that possibility, that sliver of doubt about our own capacity for terrible choices, is what makes cases like this so unsettling. Because if it could happen to Holly, if an ordinary person with no criminal history could make a choice that ends in murder charges, what does that say about the rest of us? Where's our line? What would it take to push us past it? These are questions worth sitting with, worth contemplating honestly, because understanding how ordinary people commit extraordinary violence is the first step toward preventing it. Not through fear or judgment, but through genuine self-awareness and community support and resources that help people navigate conflict without destruction. If you're still with me, thank you for listening to this entire examination of Romeca's case. This wasn't an easy story to tell or to hear. It's painful. It's tragic. It raises hard questions about human nature. But it's important. Romeca deserves to be remembered as more than a case number. Her son deserves to know people cared enough to pay attention. Her family deserves to feel like her life mattered. And all of us deserve to grapple with what this case teaches about choice and consequence and the thin line between feeling and acting. I want you to think about something. Not to be morbid, but to be honest. Have you ever felt jealous enough to imagine hurting someone? Have you ever been angry enough that violence crossed your mind, even briefly? Have you ever been so afraid that you thought about striking first instead of retreating? If you answered yes to any of those, you're human. Those are normal thoughts. Disturbing, but normal. What matters is what you do with those thoughts. Do you feed them or starve them? Do you act on them or let them pass? Do you escalate or de-escalate? That's where character lives. That's where choices matter. Holly Johnson fed her feelings instead of starving them. She escalated instead of de-escalating. She chose action over restraint. And now Romeca is dead, and Holly is facing life in prison, and multiple children are traumatized, and 2 families are destroyed. All because of choices. Specific, individual, preventable choices. So, I'm asking you, where's your line? What would it take for you to cross from feeling to acting? And more importantly, what safeguards do you have in place to prevent yourself from ever reaching that line? Do you have people you can call when emotions overwhelm you? Do you have coping strategies for anger and fear and jealousy? Do you know how to de-escalate conflict before it becomes violent? These aren't just abstract questions. These are practical life skills that separate people who navigate crisis safely from people who make choices that destroy lives.
Think about it.
Engage with it honestly, because the difference between you and Holly Johnson might be smaller than you want to believe. And acknowledging that isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's self-awareness. It's the first step toward making sure you never cross that line. This case will go to trial. A verdict will be rendered. A sentence will be imposed. Romeca's family will either feel like justice was served or like the system failed them again. Holly's family will either celebrate an acquittal or mourn a conviction. Life will continue for everyone except Romeca. She doesn't get to continue. She doesn't get to watch her son grow up. She doesn't get to finish nursing school. She doesn't get tomorrow. That was taken from her on September 8th, 2025. And no verdict, no sentence, no amount of legal process will ever give it back. That's the permanent tragedy here. That's the wound that never heals. A life ended, a future erased, potential unfulfilled, all because of choices made in moments of emotion. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it challenged you to examine your own capacity for destructive choices, then maybe Romeca's death isn't completely meaningless. Maybe it can serve as a warning, a reminder, a prompt for self-reflection. Maybe it can help someone else choose differently when they're at their own crossroads, when they're feeling that surge of jealousy or rage or fear that demands action. Maybe they'll remember this case, remember Romeca, remember the cost, and choose to walk away instead. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Where do you think the line is between self-defense and murder? What does the autopsy evidence tell you about what really happened that morning? How do you balance Holly's claimed fear with the physical evidence suggesting execution? These are complex questions without easy answers. Engage with them thoughtfully. Challenge yourself and each other. Because these conversations matter. They help us process trauma. They help us understand human behavior. They help us collectively grapple with the hardest questions about justice and morality and consequence. This case stays with me. The waste of it. 2 lives destroyed, 1 ended, 1 imprisoned. Multiple children traumatized. 2 families shattered. A community scarred. All over jealousy that should have faded. All over conflict that could have been resolved differently. All over choices that cannot be unmade. If it stays with you too, subscribe for more cases that ask hard questions about human nature, that examine the psychology of violence, that honor victims by telling their full stories, that demand we look honestly at our own capacity for darkness. Because somewhere tonight, someone is feeding jealousy, they should starve. Someone is escalating conflict, they should de-escalate. Someone is making choices that will define the rest of their lives and the lives of everyone around them. And maybe, just maybe, if they pause long enough to think about Romeca and Holly and the permanent consequences of temporary emotions, they'll choose differently. That's the only redemption available in tragedies like this. Learning from the wreckage. Choosing better. Breaking the cycle. It won't bring Romeca back, but it might prevent the next Romeca. And that has to mean something. Justice for Romeca Meeks Blackman. May her memory be a blessing. May her son find peace. May her family find healing. And may we all learn the lessons her death has to teach about the cost of our choices and the value of human life.